This is Andrew. Welcome back to Atomo. Happy Halloween here in North America. It's October 31st. A lot of things happening. We've seen some updates with the Ukraine uh, grain shipment. We talked about this a bit before. What we had is Russia participating in a grain export program to make sure that grains get out to countries that are in need, but well, through not a lot of cooperation by the powers that be that really want to have this grain moved to countries that are suffering from food security. So we have I mentioned about getting blockages down in the transit around Turkey. A lot of shipping traffic was seemingly, and I can't say for sure, we can definitely look at the shipping maps, and there were some congestions and clogs that were put there to slow things down. Then there was an attack in Crimea, and that attack just got rushed to the point, okay, well, this is just not worth doing. Uh, then United Nations comes out and says, "Well, no, 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 come back, come on, come on, come on, come on, we get back. We need this program running." So thoughts here, and let's file this under entertainment value at this point. Because I'm trying to find some details. So I'm going back to the board game idea that I mentioned before. Is well, what might be a strategic benefit of shipping or changing who's moving the grain? Now, one of the questions that's coming into play is the Lloyd's of London insurance. That is going to change. As Lloyd's of London was the primary insurer, they're not going to insure Russian ships now. But no worry, Russia will just set up their own insurance group and take care of things that way. Could be a big detriment to Lloyd's of London. So, unless they have any sort of contingency, that's a loss of an incredible book of business. Uh, Things are changing. Supply lines, monetary lines are changing. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see some headlines coming out with Lloyd's of London if they get into distress. The other thing to look at is the sheer amount of money that gets transferred by the collective West out to Ukraine and into companies, organizations to provide arms to Ukraine. Now, if everything was going well, the money would convert to arms at a pretty good ratio. But there's always spillage. What do I mean by spillage? Not all the money gets allocated towards the actual goal that that money was earmarked to achieve. Now, I need to pull receipts on this. You can do some searching on the internet. You can find some receipts on this. Now, I should be doing a little more due diligence in pulling these. That's why I'm going to file this under. Let's consider this entertainment and just opinion and just theory crafting at this point. Uh, so if we look at the game board, and a little bit that I was looking up uh, prior to doing this is the concept of the Odessa network. So there are weapons exporters that use Odessa. It looks like they've been doing this for quite a while. I'm getting articles going back to 2013, 2012, talking about this Odessa network and the claims that they move. Let's see. Ukraine-based individuals and logistics company responsible transporting weapons out of Russia and Ukraine on behalf of government sellers. It's Farley Metzko. Now, I don't know I haven't fact checked the articles. That's why I want to take this with entertainment purposes at this point. I don't know who's biased on these articles. Another one, Washington Post, talks about Ukrainian port eyed as analysts seek Syria arms source. So, Washington Post, World National Security. Despite being in Ukraine, major Russian weapons exporters have offices there alongside Ukrainian and Russian shipping and logistics company. They've reported dubbed this the Odessa network. So that's telling me that there is a capability that's established in Odessa. So there's something to keep an eye on. So that article was Washington Post. So I'm looking for kind of more legacy media articles that have been calling this out in the past. And of course, they're going to call it out if Russia is providing arms to Syria and that it goes against interests of the collective West. Again, going back to 2013, it just was telling me that the infrastructure is there. So if we're looking at grain exports coming out of Odessa, out of a place that has what I'm reading as infrastructure to support arms movement, well, that tells me that there's offices there. That means there's people connected there, that there's relationships established, that there's more than likely ways of moving money around. So the investigation here is to see, well, if Russia doesn't do, and what caught me on this that's making me think is if Russia no longer supports or is doing the actual transit of the grain themselves, somebody else is going to take the place. Now, Russia did come out, and I was reading in an article saying, well, we are going to inspect these shipments. They didn't say why. They didn't say why at this point. That's where the big question mark then popped. Okay, well, why does Russia care about this? Well, there is a potential that, and this is the theory craft, let's call it entertainment purposes, that well, collective West is pumping money into Ukraine, to which is converted into arms. That somewhere along the lines, arms are created, but then those arms don't go to the front line. They actually go down to Odessa, get loaded into a grain ship, because you load up a ship full of grain and then throw in some weapons for good measure into an area of the ship, send the ship out, and instead of it going to Africa, it actually goes to places like Turkey to find its way to Syria for the front lines there, or it gets wrapped all the way back around into Europe. So I've seen, I even read, well, why does it get transited around and pointed to Ireland, UK, or a couple of places where these ships went? These are articles are raising questions. Like, okay, well, that's interesting. So what if I were to take money from the collective West, buy armaments, don't get those armaments to the front line. Some get, but then there's bleeding or leakage of the deliveries go into our ships in Odessa, get shipped back around, and then another package comes in and they can rebuy those weapons, move them again, cut a part of them off to the front line, cut another one down into the Odessa, ship them out again, and kind of complete this cycle while us taxpayers are getting bludgeoned by this. And I don't see receipts from the government. Okay, I'd like to know, where's this money actually going? Where is it ending up? Whose books is this going through? So we can have transparency, because if you're going to support a side in a war, you might as well see that the armaments are actually getting there. I don't support this. I think that there should be peaceful ways of doing this, but hey, war is a racket and people make money off of it. And get very clever. And when you got billions upon billions of dollars, the cleverness of people to make sure that that money gets into their pockets rather out in the front lines is, yeah, yeah. I'm reading enough to say, yeah, there's potentially a little bit more going on than we're led to believe. So again, that's just theory craft at this point. Other news. ESGs. Oh, yes, environmental, social governance, the big green policies that our organizations, some of them are beholden to in order to reach climate goals and other goals. Again, ESG is just a social credit score for corporations. If you don't abide properly by the ESG, then bad things can happen, or you don't get appropriate funding that comes through the ESG style funding instruments. So an article here, info.kpmg.us, with news perspectives on industry insights and research. There's a CEO Outlook article that has come out. Okay, it's October 4, so still relatively fresh. And I looked at the CEOs, quote here, CEOs see importance of ESG, but many are planning to pause or reconsider programs. Couple bullet points here is 70% of US CEOs said their company's ESG programs improved their financial performance up to 37% last year. Huh. I'd like to know how that happens. Adding governance is actually increasing your performance. So, okay. CEO has identified access, again quoting the article here, CEO has identified access to capital as a top risk pertaining to failing to meet stakeholder expectations around ESG. Remember, stakeholders is not shareholder. Stakeholders are a group of people who could not have a financial, well, okay, be careful how I say it because it's kind of nuanced. Yeah, there is a financial thing, but you have these boards of directors in a sense, or these committees, the ESG committees outside of the organization that can actually change how your organization actually operates through these ESG instruments. 81% said, again, the article here says 81% said their organization's digital and ESG strategic investments are inextricably linked. So what happens here is while an organization is going through a digital transformation, one of the things that they do is they bring in the non-financial elements and then plug them into your digital transformation. So if I'm going down a path to develop an increase in digital footprint of that company through maybe new ways of finding data, playing with the data, or working the data in a way that find value, then I shouldn't completely go to town on ESGs. There's ways that they could be very, very helpful, especially for organizations that maybe do have an impact on the environment. So if my factory is emitting a lot of carbon, more than what potentially, if we were to take a baseline measure of industries of the same class around the world, then I should be able to benchmark myself against a range of industries like doing the same thing that mine is doing, and then I should be able to track, my above or below whatever that average is. And if I want to be a good steward, then I'd look to get below. Just because we want to do it, we got the money to do it, and we can increase, we can get into consultation with the public around our area and see what are the problems that are happening that potentially my industry is causing, and look to rectify those problems without being bludgeoned by a group saying, well, there are problems, you just have to go find them and fix them. So there are some good things that an ESG can do. And of course, anything can go quite a long way and become weaponized. So again, if there's waterways or parkland or wilderness land close to where my industry is, and that's taking a beating for some reason, yeah, I can look to correct that problem through innovation, and then market that innovation as well depending on how it's solving these things. Quoting the article, when asked to identify the greatest barrier to meeting their net zero or similar climate ambitions, CEO identified decarbonization, complex supply chains, 30%, and a lack of skills and expertise to implement solutions, 22%. This last one is really important. This is a problem that the easy money environment has done. There's a lot of too big to fail. Remember that back 2008? Oh, these companies are too big to fail. They can't fail. We'll bail them out. Whereas now what has happened is if these companies don't fail, then the management largesse that has led them to that doesn't get cleaned out and they don't learn. Um, and some of these companies have taken extreme amounts of risk and didn't realize that there were systemic problems. Now, we want to be kind of looking at this and trying to think of how to steel man it the other way is, well, these were systems that got put into play that we thought we were insulated from. So just say my banking house was supposed to keep you know high risk investments isolated from the vanilla banking side of the house, and that there's a wall between it. And you'll see things like Lehman, where we had to take operational uh, revenues and then put them over into the investment side because the investment side was getting blown up, and they had more, that connection was allowed to permeate through that wall. So when the investment side started to blow up, it took the whole house down because they weren't appropriately insulated from that because of, I don't know if that was Frank Dodd Act or there's another one saying you have to keep those pieces separate. And since I don't have chat running here, I can't ask chat. Can't remember the name of the one. I think that might have been closed down during President Clinton's time. There's another good firewall. When that went down, all of a sudden the setup started for the 2008 financial crisis. So what I mean by skills is once the easy money starts to come out, then as these digital and other, you look, okay, if you can code, you got a lot of opportunity out there. I can't go and look at organizations career pages, trip over needing of coders, developers, cloud engineers, people to be able to take computer bits and bytes and get them up into a cloud solution. That is very complex, very skill oriented work. It's highly creative work to be able to do that. And not everybody who takes the training to do that really gets to a high level of creativity. Now you get the people that can really think through a solution, really can open up the possibilities. You got others that just tell me what to do, and if that doesn't come openly, then their ability to implement the solution is quite anemic. And over my time, because I do work in technology, I've seen the ability for people to build complex solutions and be able to articulate them and be able to work at a high level abstraction and then move it down into execution. It's that art has been disappearing. Maybe with a recession and companies start to look at, okay, do I got the best people in the seats? Then people will see this and say, oh, I better up my game, instead of just kind of letting things run by. So suggestions here: if you can get into the office and collaborate, get into the office and collaborate. If you can find a way to upgrade your skills, even at home, code some games. There's all kinds of, just look to sharpen the skills. Even if you are a coder already, what additional challenges can you find that can move your range? When I talk about a range, do it from a coaching standpoint, is the ability to take all kinds of problems and be able to work with those problems as they're coming in. The same thing with when you get into high creative work like coding. It doesn't mean you have to learn every language under the sun. You just have to be able to articulate customer problems into computer code. Computer code is just what happens when you have a lot of conversations about a problem. Then you can instantiate the model into the computer code. And the better that you can model that before you get into code, the stronger your solution in code is going to be. It's actually going to be very high quality code. So and then on this line, we go a little bit further in this article. Workforce concerns include burnout and the ability to retain talent. 73% of CEOs believe that their organization's ability to retain talent will be impacted by inflation and rising cost of living. Well, maybe if people can't live in these expensive cities anymore and need to move away, now then this puts that, well, get people into the office, but maybe we can't do that because it just costs too much money for them to live in that city. They need to go somewhere else in order to find a place to live. Then what happens is the organizations and change the, oh, you're living out there, so you're going to get in a lower pay bracket because we do a region based thing as well. And oh, then there's all kinds of things. Well, then we can look at outsourcing to other places. Well, now you got wars going on, so it's possible that people who are working for you one day all of a sudden are, ooh, now there's security risks. I have to take them offline. Okay, you have to consider that. I have to consider like, okay, places like India, China, Russia, all now becoming part of the global South. So what's the collective West going to do? You can still work with these countries, but if it gets to a certain point where government's going to say them bad, we good, now you're in a risk situation. At what point are you going to turn off all these teams that you have spent money and time to ramp up to learn the domain of your product? Yeah. So, when asked about how they envision the working environment in 3 years for corporate employees whose roles were traditionally based in the office, 45% of them saw them as hybrid, 34 saw them as still in the office, and 20% saw them as fully remote. Big change. So, I'm going to stop it there. I just wanted to put a little bit about the ESGs and the workforce changing. What I'm going to set up for you to think about is this talent, the quality talent as we go through a recession. The people who really dig in and persevere, keep a lookout for them in your organizations. Uh, Treat them well. If they're persevering through this, they're not laying on their back in their wounds because, oh my God, it's getting hard here now. Yeah, because we need to do things better. We just don't have money that's kind of rolling in. We kind of say, good enough. Good enough is no longer going to be good. It's going to have to be like we really have to come out with top of the line quality on these digital products for those that are doing this because it's going to be that company needs to get the value for that money going in because things are just going to get competitive as we keep going through recession. So in order to make that miracle, you gotta have to dig a little bit and work for it. Yeah, this is Andrew. This is Atomo. Then a miracle occurred. It's all in us to do it, but we have to all play our parts.